Our story for today is that Elon slash Tesla produces some very good numbers for the quarter and even confuses Yahoo in the process. And this is part of our end of week, pre-week roundup that we do every Saturday. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. On the road today and appreciate your joining us. We also want to make sure, again, if you enjoy, please take time to like and subscribe. So the focus of today's talk is sort of what happened last week, what's going to happen next week. And we start off with sort of a strange, interesting point. So I want to give you a quiz to open, which is, if a company produces 100 cars, is it possible for them to sell 105 cars? And the answer is no. So if you look at the Yahoo Finance page today, you'll notice that Tesla announced that they, that they were able to produce approximately 185,000 vehicles. And they actually delivered, which means not only produce, but they actually signed the paperwork and sold 180,000 vehicles. So if you look at the finance page on Yahoo, it indicates that the company actually sold 185,000 vehicles when in fact they actually produced and delivered 180,000, and they still have a number of vehicles that the paperwork wasn't finished on time, but may actually increase the number sold from 180,000 plus to maybe 181,000. So I thought this was fascinating because it's a public company and there's no way they can sell more cars than they made, or vice versa. So please note this number, especially those of you who've sent us notes indicating I had it wrong. It's on a regular basis every quarter. Tesla will actually produce more cars than they sell because there are certain vehicles that did not go through the full sales process and therefore can't be counted as sales for that quarter, but will likely be counted in the next quarter. Also wanted to thank those of you who've made a note of the fact that the ramping in the China facility was started early and affected earnings in the last quarter at the end of last year. But now that those vehicles are being seen in the sales process for this year, it's quite clear that the ramping process for the Model Y in China is still going on. I think that the whole China ramp process may be a little zany, and the reason is that I keep harking back to this in our show, and that is that after the $42,000 Model Y was seen by a number of customers in Shanghai, they actually canceled their orders for Neo and other products because they indicated that the Tesla price of the Model Y China was so cheap that they had no choice but to buy. So again, what this means is that the car actually, so the Chinese government had a thing going where what they did was they picked a price for the vehicle that they knew Tesla wouldn't be able to meet. And then they were offering incentives off of that of $3,500. So Elon got creative and delivered this $42,000 vehicle that qualified for the tax credits to consumers. And so the net cost of the vehicle dropped to, $37.5K, which makes a big difference for a lot of people who are potentially buying. So the other thing about China that I think is strange, and I'm waiting to see, is that at least Elon predicted it, and we're seeing it in the local facilities. The issue that pops up is that among other manufacturers, usually 59% of the vehicles are small SUVs. In Tesla's case, what we're seeing is upwards of 80% of the cars on the lot being sold are the SUVs. So one of the things we're kind of looking forward to in China is as this transition occurs from Model 3 to Model Ys in large numbers, I'm confident that they have lines that are able to handle running both depending on what customers have ordered. But I think this is going to be a very interesting process to watch, because the entry that Tesla has done, and when they're not sold out of Model Ys as they have been for this quarter, I believe that they're definitely going to get large market share. But as they have cars to sell, that's when I think they start affecting the ability of competing entities to grow within the Chinese market that are competing with them, especially when those Chinese vehicles are as much as $10,000 or $15,000 more expensive. The head of NIO was asked relative to Tesla, going in at $42,000, what were they going to do with their $56,000 vehicle? And he indicated that at this point they have no response for it. And I think the real answer is that they really weren't prepared to compete with Tesla at that price point, and they thought they were in good shape because they thought the Tesla domestically produced was going to be in the mid 65,000 realm, when it came in at 42,000 for the lower line vehicle, and even the performance version is at 52,000, which is still below what NIO is selling its sort of premium SUV for. So I think this is going to be a very interesting period. So the other things I wanted to cover, which I think are important, that occurred this week, or as you know, stock price started off in the early 600s, dropped back to a low of 592, and then got an upgrade from an analyst. And that caused the stock price to initially bounce up into the 620s and 640s for a close. And then the following day, we reached 693 for a price. Now, I was, obviously we all saw this occur. It was clear that it was an anticipation of what the numbers were going to be for the quarter. One thing that we're going to start covering weekly is we're going to start having what I call a show on charting with the help of one of our viewers there. And the reason for that is that one of the things he pointed out this week is that there's actually a very minor short squeeze that occurred. As you'll recall, the stock price finished up at about 640, and all of a sudden it sort of made a run to open in the 680s, got to a high of 692, and then finished off at about 660. So what he indicated was that there was actually, through the charts, you could actually see a short squeeze occurring in that period. And I think this is really important to note, because the more you invest, trade with Tesla, having a good understanding on how and why there are certain movements going on with the stock price can be very lucrative in terms of your investing for your long term of when to buy. But it can also be very lucrative because if you can understand the patterns of how these things work, it's actually possible to trade them. So that said, I think it was a great end of the week, especially with the production numbers finally that we can base a whole bunch of analytics on, and so can the analysts. So I think the 3-day rule is definitely in play here. I am actually looking forward to a little bit of, I guess, what I call trading chaos, because what's going to happen, I believe, is the stock price is going to jump nicely on Monday. The problem is that there is a bunch of people who shorted the stock, and they're going to end up in a short squeeze as a result. They have to answer a tough question. Is Tesla going to rise, then stop, rise to a certain number and then come back down? Or will it rise to a certain number and keep going up? And so probably, let's say half the people will say, I'll sell out immediately and take my losses. And the other people will be saying, hey, I think we can hang in there and it'll come back down. I think it's entirely possible that the stock rises 50 to 80 points and then pulls back the 30 points from that, waiting for large institutions to do their buying upon seeing what the numbers were in the sales space. So theoretically, we should be expecting this occur. But I actually think because of when the announcement occurred, the institutions will have enough time to react to Tesla's good news in a more forceful way. So I would not be surprised to see the stock up 80, pre-market by 30 or 40 points, and then once the market opens, up 70 points. And then instead of its usual up 70, back down 20, and then start rising again after the institutions have a chance to buy, I would not be surprised if the stock price went up and then kept going up, only because the analysts over the long holiday weekend have had a chance to digest the numbers and the implication of the numbers, and then write and send reports. And so we likely end up seeing the institutions having their meetings regarding those numbers, and then able to commit capital to getting in on the stock before it rises more. The other variable that I'm noticing is that I've been watching Roku and a few other stocks and that are growth stocks. And yes, there's been nervousness about hyperinflation. I really think that the re-lockdowns in Europe are really helping the competition for commodities that have been forcing prices up. So in particular, France is on a 1-month lockdown. I believe Italy and others have joined them. And so what I'm looking forward to is a tempering of the inflation threat. And now the markets can react to people having good numbers and getting credit for it. That's awesome that Tesla's gone from 85,000 vehicles in this quarter last year to 180,000 vehicles sold, 185,000 produced, is quite amazing. So we are looking forward to a big week, and it'll be interesting to see if we can leverage access to a chartist to really see when it's a solid reason why the stock has risen rather than a short squeeze. So I just think next week is going to be a very intense trading environment where you'll see the stock move dramatically in up, sideways, and down as the process goes on for how everybody catches up to the data. I'd have to say that, my biggest surprise here is just the fact that there are all these narratives that people are handing out. Like in particular, we have some large competitors that have now introduced products into the market, and therefore Tesla sales would fall. In my mind, particularly when it comes to China, there's a challenge here, which is, hey, if you, in China, you're behooved to actually get an electric vehicle, because otherwise you may only get to drive your ICE vehicle every other day. So what this means then is that there are a lot of particularly middle and upper middle class people that are incentivized to go electric. And Tesla's now offering excellent prices for several tiers of those buyers. And so as the competition is head to head and Tesla is better priced, I just think China is a blockbuster for Tesla and a very profitable one. So I would say that put your seatbelt on, because Tesla easily could be up 200 points next week. And this kind of brings up an interesting point, which is most people don't like to trade. And I agree with it. It's hard to predict what's going to happen versus investing, which is a longer time horizon. But because of how violent Tesla's moves are, 100 points in a day or two, and potentially up 20 points in 2 or 3 business days, there's a way in which well-informed sort of owners of even the stock need to sort of stay on top of this, because there's a lot of money that's being thrown out there and made in a short period of time. And if you're well positioned, you could definitely participate and make a great deal of money. So I'm hopeful that we don't, see Yahoo join CNBC and Wall Street Journal with sort of a negative Tesla bias. I was very surprised by how poor the journalism was from Yahoo with a negative thesis on Tesla. And I'm just thinking, have they as in the Tesla haters, gotten to you guys too? Because he didn't do any research at all, but put out an article that was stuffed full of bad information. So I'll attribute it to the fact that Elon is so good at what he does that he's confusing even Yahoo's writers where they're not doing any research, but putting out negative or de facto negative articles about how and where Tesla's at. I'd have to say, after seeing this quarter, perhaps as a final note, I really think that there's an interesting problem here because from what I can see, the problem for Tesla isn't the competition. The question mark is how many vehicles can Tesla produce? Because once consumers are ready to buy, if they have long waits, it's going to be harder to get them motivated to buy. And so I think that the ramping that's being done for the Model Y in China, I'm hopeful that it keeps accelerating because there are buyers all over the world that are interested in those cars, especially at the prices they can produce them at. And so I think that despite the competition, what we're seeing is the marketplace is shifting to electric. And so there's plenty of sales opportunities for a lot of different organizations without it being a competition thing between Tesla and other entities. So we definitely look forward to your comments. Please take time to like and subscribe. Our health tip today is kind of strange. I've been having some back challenges and I've just been gingerly moving around, but then decided to start doing sort of core training exercises designed to strengthen the core. And so what I ended up doing then is, instead of gingerly going about it, I wanted to encourage you to try something that's called the bicycle. So if you lay in your bed on your back and pretend like your feet are riding a bicycle, while with your arms, in this case, behind your head. And so the whole idea is that you now have the ability to sort of relax in bed and be doing semi sit-ups as a way to strengthen your core. If you look on Google, there's a number of other really good exercises that are simple that I've been impressed by and trying out. So I just wanted to encourage you to check out the whole core training thing. The next thing would be just a reminder, 25 leg lifts a day to make sure you don't have any knee issues. Also wanted to encourage you to not eat within 4 hours of going to bed, minimum 2 hours so the food can digest. Also wanted to encourage you to consider a 2-5 or other fasting diet as a health effect as well. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German. Au revoir, French. Lahithro, Hebrew, Khoda Hafiz, Farsi, Namaste, Hindi, Konbanwa, Japanese, good day, our friends in Australia. And in Jamaica, we say enough respect. And so please do not send me an email or text regarding the fact that the company is selling more cars than they built. It's not going to happen. Also wanted to note that we do have some SpaceX shares, a new allocation of them. The way to contact us is either join us on Patreon or over on Facebook in a private message. I need an email address and a phone so I can respond. And we're having some difficulty with our admin at Teslafaninsight because Wix is our host and they're not allowing our emails to go through there. So unfortunately, that's an unavailable. I will also list another email address for you that you can also send us a note on AOL, fcp1@AOL, if you're interested. But we do have some SpaceX and have process for getting you involved in that. Have a great day. Bye for now. And thanks once again for joining us.